The of children, just generally speaking in this country, but particularly here in the state of Texas as well, is something that really sets me off.
Describe for us some of the vile mess that's going on in these kind of places.
I have gone to these school boards and I have read them, some of the most horrific stories.
He slid one arm under me, flipped me over onto my stomach, tugged me to the foot of the bed. Suddenly, he was inside me in one gigantic shudder. It was all released right there in me. That right there is found in Plano ISD school libraries.
We're talking about all sorts of acts that involve children or that are for children to consume in their library that our tax dollars pay for.
This is Joseph Mengele.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff that we're now seeing. There was a time that people would say things like that and it was an exaggeration. No more.
The left, they're very, very cunning in this way. They know that if they can get around the parent, they can indoctrinate the child and then they can own the child. And so the way to do that is, well, we'll put these books available in public schools. The kid can go check it out. The parent won't know because it's not done with the parent's consent. And the kid, it's going to be too late at that point because the kid will have already read it.
It is a pleasure for me to have in the studio, in our Dallas studio, Sara Gonzales. How are you, Sara?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's just terrific that you could drive across town. Last time I was here, I drove from here all the way over to the Blaze studio, which is about, 15 minutes from here?
Yes.
10 minutes?
Yeah.
You were gracious enough to have me on your show, and it is my pleasure to have you on Ideas Have Consequences. And the idea that I want to talk about today is you, Sara.
Okay.
Sara Gonzales as an idea, as a property, as a Blaze property, as a woman who has her own show over there, Unfiltered with Sara Gonzales. Impressive studio, impressive work that you do. You're a bold voice in the culture. And, I follow you on Twitter, see a lot of the stuff that you're putting out, and girl, you don't mind mixing it up. I mean, I'm not into transgenderism, but you have a little bit of a man trapped in a woman's body because you are coming out and just slugging people on social media, and I love it, frankly.
I appreciate that. Well, the thing is I stopped caring what people thought about me a long time ago and just said I'm just going to fight for what's right and let the chips fall where they may, and that's just how I chose to live my life now. So,
well, it's interesting you say that. I would like to follow up on that because yesterday I was doing a little Q&A and somebody asked that very question. How do you deal with the negativity, the hateful things that people will say and will write about you? How do you deal with that?
It's actually very easy for me. And I really, truly believe that there are just people who are built to withstand that and people who are not built for it. I guess I'm one that's built for it because I look at that and I think, well, I must be over the target. If people are, I've gotten death threats. There was a gentleman who was prosecuted in the state of North Carolina in particular for some death threats a couple years ago. So, I get all sorts of messages. A lot of them are very negative, but it just doesn't bother me. I know that I'm over the target. If people are sending me messages, I know that my message is getting through. And quite honestly, it kind of does the opposite of intended effect because it just lights an even bigger fire under me to just keep going. Because if I'm angering the right people, I must be doing something right. So I think that you have to just have a certain character for that. Do
you have a strategy? Like, do you say, I don't read comments or I stay away from that kind of stuff?
I read all the comments.
You read them
actually,
all?
Yeah.
I pay attention to everything that's being said.
I find them very fascinating. I want to see what people like, what people don't like, what the general consensus is on, not just my commentary, but what I'm talking about, what matters to people who are watching. I want to know. And part of that means you read the comments, or I guess you assign someone else to read the comments, but it doesn't really bother me because I think that there are a lot of Americans who are upset and just done with the same things that I am done with. And so they're happy to hear someone else kind of passionate about what they're probably screaming to their TV, the same exact thing that I'm saying, right? And so they're happy to have someone representing them saying the things that they want to say, but maybe they can't because they don't have an audience, or they're scared to. That's a big one. People are scared to say these things out loud because they're scared what their friends might think of them. So to be able to do that, I feel, very blessed, and, I want to know what people are saying.
Were you always built that way, or did you go through a period of time where maybe you were more timid as a young woman and then this changed? Not that you aren't a young woman now, but you know what I mean.
No, that's very kind.
As a younger woman.
We're using the term young very liberally today. No, actually, funny story. So I was in Girl Scouts when I was younger. And this may have been when I was in Brownies, which is the junior to the Girl Scouts. And so we sold the cookies every year. And my mom always likes to tell this story. I was walking across the neighborhood because, nowadays people just bring the thing to work and say, which one of my coworkers wants to buy Girl Scout cookies from my children? Previous to that, we actually walked the streets. I mean, we went door to door. Maybe some people still do, but we went door to door to door in the entire neighborhood trying to sell the most Girl Scout cookies. And my mom likes to tell the story of my salesmanship at a very young age. Whenever I would actually get someone to open the door and I would ask them if they wanted Girl Scout cookies, I would actually stick my foot in the doorway so they couldn't shut the door on me so that I could make the sale. So I think I've just always been that way.
So it's just a part of your part of your DNA.
Yeah.
Your makeup. What drew you to political commentary, cultural commentary?
Yeah, it's funny. I ran an insurance brokerage firm, and we did group health insurance, so employee benefits. And I found myself wanting to write about politics, about, culture, what was going on in our country at that time. This was 2015. And I've always been fascinated by that world. I remember I had a college professor who asked me to come to his, wrote on one of my papers, "I want you to come visit my office hours." And at first I was like, this seems weird. And then I went.
I think if you'd have been my daughter, I'd have said, no.
Yeah, don't go.
Extra credit, I don't think so.
Yeah. And so I went, and he actually tried to sit me down and convince me to go to law school, because he said, "You're very good at this. Your writing is very good."
He's just naturally argumentative.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so which my mom would agree with growing up. And so you should go into this. And at the time, I was graduating in 3.5 years. I worked very hard to graduate early. And I was like, I don't want to have worked so hard to graduate early just to go back into school. And, knowing how much it cost at that time, I can't even imagine now. And so I was like, I'm not. But it always those skills stuck with me and the interest stuck with me. So I just found myself writing as a hobby when I was an insurance agent. And then I kind of built up my career in politics, writing in that realm. And then eventually flip-flopped the two, where I was doing insurance part-time and I was writing about politics and culture full-time. And then, of course, I just ended up dropping the insurance altogether. Thanks a lot, Obamacare. So
yeah, your path is a more traditional path. That's a path that's like mine. I was a freelance writer.
Yeah.
Still am, but I do a lot less of that now because I'm doing more of this. But
Right.
I was freelance writer, author. That was the way it was done in the old days. And podcasts were not really a thing. And even when they did become a thing, they were something that kids were doing in the in the garage. They didn't have an air of legitimacy. It was like self-publishing. It just wasn't quite the same thing. But wow, how that market has changed in a very big way. What's your real passion in addressing issues? I mean, do you have one that's a real trigger for you?
Yes. And I mean, really anything that affects kids. The sexualization of children, just generally speaking in this country, but particularly here in the state of Texas as well, is something that really sets me off. Everything that I do for my boys. I have 2 young boys. One is 11, one is 3. And I just tell myself, I see the degradation of society, and I want to be able to look my children in the eye when they are grown and tell them I did everything that I could to make this society a better place for you guys to raise your kids in. And that's just how I try to live my life. So whether it is going to, a school board and talking to them about the pornographic literature that they have in schools, or it's rooting out all of the drag queen story time hours for children. There's just, unfortunately, our kids are getting hit with a lot right now when it comes to that. And it's just something that I can't categorize as anything but evil.
Amen, sister. I am so with you. I have said essentially the same thing many times, that I would want on my tombstone something to the effect of, he left it all on the field.
Right.
He gave everything that he had in order to prevent the kind of evil that we see creeping over our society, and to give voice to the voiceless, to protect the defenseless, I think is incredibly important in the things that are happening with our children. This is Joseph Mengele, kind of stuff that we're now seeing. There was a time that people would say things like that and it was an exaggeration. No more. We're seeing the annihilation of the unborn. We're seeing these irreversible surgeries being performed on children, which is absolutely horrifying kind of stuff. You have been basically a mole into some of these drag queen story hours. Penetrating may not be the right word, but covertly getting in the midst of some of these drag queen story hours. Tell us a little. First of all, what I want to hear about is how you managed to achieve it. I mean, how do you get into places like that? People always ask me about the World Economic Forum. Larry, how do you get in? Well, for me, it seems like that's a lot easier because I just act like I own the building and I just walk in. But for you, I would think that's a little bit different kind of covert ops. So first, tell us, how in the world are you able to achieve it? Most emergencies come without warning. And when the next one comes, you won't have time to pack and prepare. You need to get ready now, before an emergency strikes. Your supplies should be ready to grab and to go right away. Secure those supplies at my website, preparewithideas.com. Start with 4-week emergency food kits from my Patriot Supply. Helping millions of Americans prepare since 2008, my Patriot Supply are experts in self-reliance. Their 4-week emergency food kits offer over 2,000 calories every day. Protected by heavy-duty 4-layer packaging, these kits last up to 25 years. Sealed inside rugged, handled buckets, they're made to grab quickly. Go to preparewithideas.com and save $50 per kit. They ship fast and free in unmarked boxes. Save $50 per kit at preparewithideas.com.
Well, I own a lot of wigs. I can tell you that. I've got a pink wig. I've got a blue wig. I just think, what would a leftist who wants to engage in this degeneracy look like? And typically, they have crazy hair. So you type in
a picture.
Yeah, and typically, they've got the crazy hair. So I wear a wig. I'll tell you, COVID did make it much easier because I could just put on a mask and half my face was already covered. So nobody could really tell what I looked like under the mask. But I just try to, I pay very close attention to what I wear, try to wear something a little bit
just
outlandish.
Outrageous.
And put on the wig.
What do the kids say when they see mommy leaving the house?
Yeah, I try to put on the wig in the car.
Okay.
But usually I tell my older son, if he asks, he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? I'm like, going to save the world, honey. I'll be back later. And just leave. And that's about it.
Who knew that you didn't wear the cape? You wear the drag costume to save the world.
Right. And I will say it is unfortunate for my water bill because I need about 20 showers after each one that I go to.
Bet.
It is quite disgusting. But yeah, I mean, I just try to get into their headspace of what would a leftist look like? What would a leftist act like? The worst part about it, I will tell you, the worst part about going to these events is that I feel the need to buy something, right? Like I have to blend in. I can't just go there and get a water with nothing, right? So I have to patronize them somehow, and I hate that.
So what do they
don't want to give money
Maybe I
to
don't
them.
want to know the answer to this question, but I didn't know they would be selling things.
Well, typically they hold them at a lot of restaurants, at a lot of bars, and things like that. Now, I won't buy anything if it's the Pride Festival because you really don't want to know what they're selling in front of children at these festivals. But if it's a restaurant, I'm like, I can't just be the weirdo that comes in and orders a drink. Orders a water. So I feel like I have to patronize them somehow, and I hate that. It makes me sick. But the amount of traction that we've gained from just putting the videos out there and showing people this is literally what is happening in front of children has been well worth it.
And this is Project Veritas kind of stuff that you're doing. How many times have you done this?
Oh, gosh. Probably 15 or 20. And I mean, the videos have gotten millions upon millions of views.
How are you filming? I've seen some of them, but I can't really tell. Like, are you
with my phone?
You are just with your phone.
I am, and the sad part is, it's not even. It's like everyone's filming with their phones, but they're filming for different reasons, right? They're filming because they think it's fun, and they're putting it on their Instagram stories and all sorts of. They want to brag about how they're doing this, and so I'm just filming just like them, except they don't realize that I'm going to show the other angle, which is look at this grown man shaking his rear right in front of a child that's behind him while sexually explicit songs play, right? So they're already filming it. So I just blend in, honestly.
Is it Village People? Is that who they're playing?
No,
it's not Village People.
You would wish that it was Village People, honestly. The stuff that they talk about in these songs that they're playing in front of children.
I don't
You would long
know.
for Village People.
Okay, so it's not YMCA they're playing.
No.
Describe for us some of the vile mess that's going on in these kind of places. I mean, I want my don't be too descriptive, but I want my audience to be sufficiently scandalized to understand that this is grooming. This is grooming of children. How do they go about doing that with children?
Well, I mean, the shows that we're talking about right now are one way because, you have a young child that is very impressionable.
What age are we talking about?
Anywhere from 2 to 16, 17 is what I've seen. I mean, we've seen young toddlers up to teenagers, but all of those years, I would argue, are all impressionable for different reasons, right? But if you take a young child, let's say 3, my youngest boy is 3. Okay, let's say 3, and you put him in a situation where you're showing him that men can be women and women can be men and everything is fluid and we should talk about all of these, sexually explicit things that people are doing. That is, I mean, he soaks that up like a sponge. Right? Yeah, everything. They're observing the world around them from a very, very young age. And so they're thinking this is normal. It's being portrayed to them as normal, even from that young age. But what's worse is when they go into the public school system, then they really confuse them with the literature that they have in school libraries here in public school, and honestly, probably in some private schools as well. But I have gone to these school boards and I have read them, some of the most horrific stories that you would, I mean, we're talking about, again, I won't get graphic, but I'll tell you the subject matter. We're talking about incest between a dad and a daughter. We're talking about oral. We're talking about all sorts of sexual acts that
involve children.
That involve children or that are for children to consume in their library that our tax dollars pay for. And so even there at school, because they know the left, they're very, very cunning in this way. They know that if they can get around the parent, they can indoctrinate the child and then they can own the child. And so the way to do that is, well, we'll put these books available in public schools. The kid can go check it out. The parent won't know because it's not done with the parent's consent. And the kid, it's going to be too late at that point because the kid will have already read it. And then we got him.
Sitting off stage here is my friend and your friend, Chad Prather. But Chad will verify that this is the way it used to be. Used to be, you went at the public school library to look for the swimsuit issue. Chad was going for the National Geographics. But you're saying things have changed hugely since that time.
Yes, yeah.
And
bad.
So now I've even seen instances where parents are reading these books and the school board shuts them down because they say this is offensive, but they're saying, but this is what you're giving to the children.
Exactly.
So what's the reaction of school boards when you are exposing them to the literature that they're placing into the schools? We recently had some monumental news that no one is talking about. For the first time in our history, the interest we pay on the national debt surpassed every individual budget item except Social Security. That's right. The U.S. now spends more on interest than on national defense or even Medicare. And it's only going to get worse as big government continues to spend like drunken sailors. That's why savvy investors, central banks, and concerned savers are turning to gold, because it's not tied to the inflated U.S. dollar. You can too with the help of Birch Gold. For over 20 years, Birch Gold Group has helped thousands of Americans protect their savings by converting an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. To learn more, text IDEAS to 989898 and claim your free, no obligation info kit on gold. Birch Gold has earned my trust with their education-first approach, their thousands of happy customers, and their countless 5-star reviews. Protect your savings. Text IDEAS to 989898 today.
You know, it's funny, Larry. The last time I did this was my old school district, which is Plano Independent School District here. I think we're actually literally right now sitting in that territory in Plano, ISD at least. And I had to stand there and read them sexually explicit literature that was in their schools, which I, by the way, reminded them, this wasn't like this. When I went, it wasn't like this. You would have never found something like this in our libraries, and now you're providing it to young children. How dare you? And what I did after I read it to them was I FOIA'd their notes, because you can actually, Freedom of Information Act, you can request a copy of the school board's notes that they are writing during the meeting. And what was fascinating to me, Larry, is that I read almost every single one of them when I spoke, wrote down, she read porn. And I thought to myself, well, hold on. You're admitting that that's what I'm reading, but you still want to give it to kids. So what does that say about you?
Yeah.
You know that that's what it is. You have just categorized it as that in your own words. And I just thought, what kind of world are we living in that they can admit that and it still takes them this much effort to just say, could you please not provide it to kids?
Are there any school board members who respond to this with shock and horror and effort to try to remove it? Like, wow, Ms. Gonzales, we had no idea.
No.
No.
I think that we honestly, our side has been asleep at the wheel and have not found value in serving on school boards, in serving on city councils. For all we talk about the president of the United States, and while that is a very important position, the fact of the matter is that our local officers, of course, affect our daily lives way more than a president ever could. And so I think that we've just been asleep at the wheel and thought, I'm gonna go work hard for my family. I'm gonna come home. I'm gonna take care of my kids. I'm gonna take care of my own. And other than that, I'm gonna leave. I want everyone else to leave me alone, and I will in turn leave them alone. And what that's created is, of course, a playing field that's left wide open for the left to come in and infiltrate in all of these different places. So, I mean, most of the time, it's overwhelmingly the radical left that is on these school boards and city councils, and they just don't care.
You have just articulated something I've said repeatedly. There needs to be, this is a legit doctoral dissertation right here.
Yeah.
That if it doesn't matter if you have a community of where, the left, radical left comprises 4% of your population, they'll somehow end up in charge. I've noticed this with HOAs. I've noticed this with school boards. I've noticed it with school administrations, universities. It is a strange thing. And my theory for that, which maybe is just a slight rewording of what you were just saying, is that I think that a conservative mindset, a traditional conservative mindset, is sort of live and let live.
Yes.
The way I put it is, a conservative gets up in the morning, he gets a cup of coffee and begins to think about his day. The leftist gets up in the morning, gets a cup of coffee, and begins to think about your day too.
Right, exactly.
Because they want to control your day. And I think we're far enough past it that I could probably say this. In 2011, we were looking to do it, and I see your University of Alabama, logo right there. Roll Tide, girl. Roll Tide. But 2011, we were doing a Super Bowl commercial. And we were looking for a stadium to do it. Now, there's a lot of people within my own state who think that the University of Alabama is much more unfriendly to a Christian endeavor than, say, is Auburn University.
Okay.
But that's actually a misconception because what you have taking place at an administrative level is often very different than what you have below that. And the University of Alabama said to us, come and use Bryant-Denny Stadium. Now this was a commercial in which we were promoting John 3:16. You saw it. You probably don't remember it, but a football player has in his eye black,
I do remember this,
John
actually.
3:16, and it shows a couple of guys drinking beer on the couch, and they're watching the game and they're cheering, and a quarterback gets sacked, and then the linebacker who sacked him gets up, and the camera focuses on his face. You see John 3:16, and one of them says to the other, what does that even mean? And he says, I'm going to look it up, and that's all there is to the commercial. Well, the University of Alabama said, you can have Bryant-Denny Stadium for that commercial. We love this commercial. We want you to do it. And I said, is it going to get you in any trouble? And they said, next day's pro day. We have to paint the field anyway.
Right.
So just come on. And so the University of Alabama allowed us to film that commercial there, which was fantastic. It was great. They let us come and use the stadium for that. But again, you would have individuals in administration who would not reflect, the rank and file. And I find this is true in almost every institution.
Yeah.
And Lori, my wife, she has been saying that I need to start telling people, and she's right about this, and it's what you're already saying, we need to mobilize conservative people to run for office, for local school boards, for county commission, for all those kind of things, and they're not doing it because I think that we've grown up kind of in a world. You graduated in 2010?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
You're undoubtedly younger, but seriously, we grew up in a world where we were used to the walls being manned. By people we could trust, who are looking outward and were protecting us from the evil that has plagued so much of the world. I'm traveling constantly. I'm already this year, I think I've been in six or seven countries. And what most Americans don't realize is that most of the world is a hellhole.
Yeah.
Most of it is. Even the countries that they think are wonderful countries, like people say, oh, I'd love to live in Paris. And I'd say, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You loved your vacation where you stayed at the Four Seasons.
Right.
And you had a dinner cruise down the Seine, and you were clinking champagne glasses atop the Eiffel Tower. That's not the way French people live.
Right.
That's not real life. And you've confused your travel experience, your honeymoon or whatever it was, with the reality of the world. And the reality of the world is that for the most part, people are taxed into oblivion. They are not free. They're mass surveillance, the kind of things that the left are trying to bring here. And I think that the result of that is that conservatives need to alter their thinking and have to now absolutely engage, or they will lose the freedom that they have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I think that the good news is I think that we're waking up.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's too late.
Yeah.
That's my problem, is that we're waking
I
up.
refuse to believe it.
But look, I agree. I think that there's still time, but look at how much the left has taken from us in such a short amount of time. I mean, you're talking about these other places and how bad they are to live, and I agree with you that they are way worse. But you're like taxed into oblivion, and I'm thinking, well, I just had to write a fat check to the IRS on tax day not that long ago, and I'm still mad about it.
Which just went straight to Ukraine.
Exactly.
And back to corrupt politicians.
Exactly. And so you said that, and I'm like, yeah. And then, we're talking about, we're basically importing the third world right now at our southern border. So I'm thinking, well, how much longer for that? You're talking about, well, they're less free. I agree, but, they just renewed the FISA bill. Without a warrant. They wanted to include a warrant amendment, and that was rejected. And I'm thinking, you're right, but it is slowly creeping in at an accelerated rate, and that very much scares me.
Well, and I think it just scares a lot of conservatives, anybody who's sensible, it does. But I'm going to shame you with this.
Okay.
I'm going to say that Jesus changed the world with 12.
Yeah.
So I think he can. I think he can use any of us. We need more Sara Gonzaleses. We need more Chad Prathers. We need more people who are willing to speak out and to resist.
More Larrys.
Well, let's hope. Yes, more Larrys. That would frighten Lori to think there's more than one of me running around. But yes, we need more people who are speaking out, who are willing to resist, who are say, I will not. You know what I think of is, I haven't discussed faith with you at any point, either on your show or on mine yet. But I'm thinking of an image that keeps coming to my mind. is of an image. It's the 90-foot tall, 9 feet wide Nebuchadnezzar statue where he says, when the music plays, you will all bow down and worship it. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, not going to do it. And I think everybody is going to have, and he says, hey, if you don't, you get thrown into the fiery furnace. You know, the old Vacation Bible School story that we've all heard many times. But I think everybody is now in America, everyone with a conscience or conviction, they will face their fiery furnace moment where you will either bow down and wear the Nazi armband or you will say, no, I won't. And I think we're still at a place where it is the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I'm mindful of what was his name? Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, said that social media was deliberately designed to give a disproportionate representation to leftist opinion, so that you go on there and you look at it and you go, oh wow, you know, I guess the idea that there's this binary thing of right and wrong of sexes really is just not a popular opinion.
Right.
But no, they've actually rigged the game to give the impression that everyone is just as radical and that you are the person who is in the minority.
Right.
The information I'm about to share with you might shock you. Right now, there is a silent epidemic affecting 100 million Americans that nobody wants to talk about. It's called fatty liver. We throw everything at our livers: cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, heavy metals, statins, cigarettes. That's why so many of us have a sluggish, fatty liver that makes us gain weight and lose energy. Fatty liver also affects our sleep quality and may be a risk to our heart health. That's why it's important to start protecting your liver today. You can do so with Liver Health Formula. It's an all-natural supplement which contains 11 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. This company already has helped more than 2 million fellow Americans with their products. Try Liver Health Formula by going to getliverhelp.com/Larry and claim your free bonus gift. That's getliverhelp.com/Larry. I think we need more and more people who are just willing to say, you know, a guest that I recently had on the show, Lawrence Fox, who was he was an actor, a British actor. But I was thinking we need more Lawrence Foxes too, because that guy, the left hates him in Britain. And it is because he just says, no, I'm not playing the game.
Right.
They will come and intimidate him, threaten to arrest him, have arrested him, lawsuit after lawsuit, and he just keeps giving them, forgive me, the middle finger.
Yeah.
He just keeps going. And I thought, you know, if London doesn't have to have 1,000 Lawrence Foxes.
Right.
If they had 50 Lawrence Foxes, it might be enough.
Yeah, and that's something that it is frustrating for me, because I get so many people who send me information and say, you should come to our school board and read this book. This book can you come to, we're in Houston.
And they
can
need
you
to
come?
just do it.
Yes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
You guys need to empower yourselves to go in and do it. You need to take back your communities. Sara Gonzales can't take back everyone else's community.
Yeah.
You have to organically go in there and take back your communities. I'm one person. I can't be everywhere at once, but there's no reason why you can't do it yourself.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely true. I think that somehow, and this is almost like a conversation offset.
Yeah.
But we're letting other people listen in as we strategize and we think about this. Somehow with our platforms, we have to empower people, give them the confidence they can do that. I feel like we were just talking, you know, before the camera started rolling about how we hate the term influencer, but unfortunately we're kind of forced to use it. I don't like the way a lot of so-called influencers in the space that we're in, on political, cultural commentary, that there's almost this scrolling banner, you know, across the bottom that says, don't try this at home. You know, you need me to be able to do this. Well, maybe I specialize in this, you specialize in this, others specialize in this, but we need to find a way to mobilize the ordinary person on the street, not where they feel like they have to, you know, don't think in terms of changing the world. Can you change the opinion of your neighbor over the backyard fence,
right,
of a colleague at work? These days, maybe the person on the pew sitting next to you at church. Are you willing to engage the school board? As I say, be a pest.
Yes.
You know, I think of the biblical, you know, the parable of the persistent widow who gets justice in the end, not because the judge is just, but because he finds her so annoying. It's just like, get this woman away from me. She just keeps knocking on the door. I think we need people to be pests, to say, no, I'm going to be the squeaky wheel.
Yes.
I will not tolerate these books in my library. I will not tolerate, a middle-aged man twerking in front of a child. I will not tolerate that. And we need more people who are willing to do that. But how we give people that confidence to do that? Maybe it's just incremental steps.
Yeah.
You know, you don't become Sara Gonzales overnight.
Right.
Sara Gonzales didn't become Sara Gonzales overnight. You know, it was a process of gaining confidence and going, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah, and I think too, it requires being engaged with your community, right? Because because a lot of the time there is value in getting the millions of views from your platform, right?
Course.
So maybe you haven't built up a platform. You're like, I could make an X account right now and I would have 0 followers who would see my video. That's fine. Create a community of people who will share it.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I try to tell people who come to me. I'm like, I cannot be in 10 places at once, but what I can do is you go do it, get the video, and I'm happy to amplify it for you, right? So even if you don't have someone that you know who has that platform, get 40 of your friends who are also invested in the school to all share it. And so that will then give the public pressure that is needed because, you know, when I run an organization that we try to get all of the drag shows for kids just shut down before they even begin because we don't want the kid to be exposed to it in the first place, right? And the thing that has worked so well is sending out email blasts for people to say, call them, leave them a review on Facebook, okay? And guess what? It's not going to be positive. That's not going to be a positive review that they receive, right? But once they start getting that public pushback, once they start hearing from the public, yes, exactly right. The pressure works.
It does.
It has been so effective. And so the more people that see it and the more people that push back, then you will start enacting change.
You know, I have wondered, Sara, and maybe I shouldn't say this on air, but I have wondered, have you seen this film about these GameStop guys? I've forgotten the name of it, but it's that you remember just a few years ago, a group of Reddit users, just a few thousand of them, they cost Wall Street billions of dollars over the whole GameStop thing. They kept driving the stock up, and it was incredible what they did. But I've often wondered what would happen if our combined platforms and getting other people involved, you say to people on a given day, we're dumping Disney stock. Everybody today is dumping Disney stock. Next on the list is, and we're dumping this stock. We're dumping this stock. The power that is potentially there is enormous. And I think conservatives have seen 2 cases. You mentioned one of them just spot on. And that is, the first one is Chick-fil-A. You remember the whole Chick-fil-A day?
Yes.
And it was an attempt by the left to cancel Chick-fil-A. And Mike Huckabee said, hey, Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day. I don't know that Chick-fil-A appreciated it. But anyway, everybody lined up around the block to just, and I thought, what more easy protest is there to eat a chicken sandwich and some waffle fries?
Right,
I mean, it's a tasty protest.
A delicious chicken sandwich, by the way.
A delicious chicken sandwich that we can all do, and it's easy, and it defeated them.
Yeah.
They backed off because they realized this is not working. This is not working. And then, of course, Bud Light is another one. Conservatives realize, you know, I do have a voice and I do have power, but we've won battles. We've not been able to convert that into a strategy for winning a war.
Right.
And that strategy is there somewhere because we vastly outnumber the left. But I'm mindful of this. We were talking, again, just before we started the show, I was talking about a good friend of mine, Jay Smith. Jay takes on radical Muslims. He has for about 30 years. And a dear friend of mine, and I've debated with him, that is on his side, the two of us taking on radicals in London. And I remember Jay saying this to me when I got an invitation to debate a Muslim cleric on Al Jazeera. And Jay Sekulow had called me and said, Larry, whatever you do not do this. Every AK-47 wielding terrorist in the world is going to see you. Because they were broadcasting it to their domestic audience, only 15,000 on Al Jazeera America, which is now defunct. But they were broadcasting it across all their platforms. It's 270 million people.
Wow.
And he said, I mean, you will get every kind of death threat imaginable. And I was a little disappointed that people were telling me not to do it. So I called Jay and I said, Jay, should I do it? And he said, yes, yes, yes. He said, you should do this. He said, you have the chance to encourage so many Christians who are being persecuted around the world. But then he said this. He said, radical Muslims, they are used to intimidating Westerners and Westerners backing down.
Yeah.
They're used to getting in your face. You think about when at Hyde Park, we were debating at Hyde Park, and they come up to you and kind of chest bump you, and they're trying to intimidate you from debating. He says that's the way they operate, and he said you just keep going forward, just keep doing it. And I've decided that this is the way the left operates. Slightly different. It's not usually physical. It's more with legal intimidation.
It's getting increasingly physical these days.
Yeah. Well, there's truth to that, but where we have so lowered the bar, Sarah, I think, for what we define as brave.
Yeah.
Because I will have people say to me, and I'm sure you get this all the time too, Larry, you're so brave. I just am afraid to voice my opinion. That's why you use this avatar and this kind of thing. And I think previous generations of men, saved the world, storming the beaches of Normandy. And now I'm brave for posting something against the transing of children on social media. I'm not saying it doesn't require some level of, a willingness to get out there and do something, but that's not courage.
Right.
The bar has been so lowered, and I think we have to get back to what real courage is, and people have to stop sitting on their hands and be saying, you know what, I'm willing, as you said at the beginning of this interview, I am willing to suffer people calling me names on social media. I wasn't inviting them to my barbecue anyway. I mean, what do I care?
Well, here's the thing with that too, is that this is what I try to remind people. Those people who are calling you a homophobe, a transphobe, a xenophobe, all of the phobes, right? Those people, racist, a bigot, they were going to call you those names anyway.
They're not going to be your friends.
No.
Nothing was going to make them your friends. A lot of them these days are bots.
Right. But
you're arguing with a bot.
Exactly. We spend so much time on the defense. Like, let me explain to you why I'm not any of those things. Stop explaining to them.
Just siphoning your energy away.
Yes. They're going to call you those names no matter what. So just ignore it and keep going and keep doing what's right.
Well, as a woman of faith, how does that factor in for you in doing what you do?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that I haven't told the story a lot. The further that
you heard it here first.
Exclusive.
Ideas have consequences.
The further that I push against specifically the trans agenda and the drag queen stuff, my younger son was too young to come up with this on his own, but we started getting, really just demonic attacks in our household. Had a spiritual advisor that we now work with because this really is a battle for good and evil. It really is. And you have a 1-year-old, a 1.5-year-old who barely knows the English language, who is telling you that there is a man in his light that is pushing down on his chest and hurting him at night. You tend to take it seriously. And it always seemed to increase right after I had exposed another one of the drag shows. And for a while, I didn't want to talk about it because I was like, maybe I should lay low. Maybe I should stop this. Maybe this is bad for my kids. Should I put my kids through this just to expose this kind of stuff? And, I know that was, of course, the devil talking. And then I said, I have to, because this is bad and this is really scary, but what's scarier is allowing this to become commonplace in society. And so, we worked through it and we continue to work through it, but it's hard. It's really hard. But again, I think that we all have to have the mentality, if not me, then who?
Exactly. Here I am, Lord, send me.
Right.
Here I am, Lord, send me. That's been a mentality that has been a driving force throughout my entire life. Is I'll go.
Yeah.
If someone else won't, I'll do it. And over the course of my career, I've covered some stories that are quite dark and horrifying. In Nigeria, the slaughter of Christians there by the Fulani herdsmen militia and the Boko Haram, both Islamic militant sects, and I'm talking about girls being taken into sex slavery, women raped, boys macheted, men lined up against a wall and shot. These kind of stories, and then I've just returned from South America, and I was down near, the Darien Gap, and I'm there engaging with you're bumping up against evil where you feel the only other thing that I think is comparable to it is many years ago I was involved in a prison ministry, a maximum security prison called Kairos, and you'd go into the worst prisons in the country. And when you went through those electronic doors, it was like a physical presence of evil.
Yeah.
Like a physical presence of evil. And I could feel kind of the same sort of thing on this most recent trip. Some of what I did on this most recent trip was wonderful, right. Beautiful hotels and wonderful meals and nice people. But you turn right around and you're listening to a woman describe being raped 3 times, and some other people telling you about somebody who's just eaten by a jaguar, or whatever, and it affects you.
Yeah. And
I found myself coming back and going, you know what? I need to get off of this platform for a little while.
Yeah.
I need to see a pretty sunset. I need to sit with my wife and just enjoy a nice evening, a nice dinner, an old movie. I want this garbage out of my head. It sounds to me like, because you began by saying, do you feel like you need to take a bath after a bath after a bath? Do you find yourself deeply, is traumatized too strong a word by some of what you're encountering?
No, I don't think so. That's certainly a word that I would use for it. Just seeing the atrocities that you're seeing, of course, I'm sure yours is far more traumatic than mine.
Well,
right?
I don't know. I think the kind of things that are being done to children, absolutely horrifying that you'd be observing.
Yeah. And I guess it's the more maternal side of me that, I'll talk to, say, a detransitioner like Chloe Cole, who is like, I can't get my body parts back, right? I can never have that back. I won't be able to, if I can even have a child, because they're sterilizing our kids, if I can even ever have a child, I will never know the joy of nursing her. And I talk to these people, and something in me just really internalizes that. I wouldn't ever try to say I know their pain, but just hearing story after story after story, talking to these people, seeing the atrocities being done to these young children, and hearing the after effects of it. It just, it really does get to you. And it's funny, I have certain viewers of my show who will say, Sarah, you've just gotten so angry recently. And I'm like,
it does make you angry, doesn't it?
That's what I said. I don't think you're paying attention if you're not angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone should be angry.
Yeah,
it should be a righteous indignation.
I've heard people say that to me, and it's always with a hint of condescension.
Yes, yeah, and I'm
Calm down.
I'm sorry. Is everything sunshine and rainbows in your world? Because if so, I want to go there. Where is that? I'd love to know.
Yeah.
It's not here in real life.
It does make you angry, and it should make you angry.
Yes, yeah.
I think Scripture tells us, be angry, but do not sin.
Right.
There's a place for righteous anger. It's funny because there are some people who think that anger is always a wrong emotion. If you are witnessing the grooming of children and it doesn't make you angry,
right,
there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Yeah.
They are sterilizing young children. They're undergoing irreversible procedures and chopping off their body parts.
Yeah.
I'd say it's time to get a little more angry about that situation.
I want to encourage everyone to join our newsletter. That's join.larrytaunton.com. Now, why is that important? Well, because it helps us to maintain contact with you apart from big tech. So whenever there's a new interview, a podcast, a video short, a live, we have the ability to contact you directly without going through big tech. So you can join that by going to join.larrytaunton.com. Have parents just gone so far they're just that insane? First of all, I could never imagine as a little boy that I would have ever said, Mom, I feel like a little girl.
Right.
But if I ever had, she'd have said, yeah, whatever, eat your beans.
Right.
My father, I can't imagine what my father would have said. My father would have, probably given me a backhand for something so silly as that. Where is parenting gone? Is this a social media phenomenon where parents are leveraging their children for their own celebrity?
There is a certain subset of that is happening, absolutely 100%. There's also, you talk about social media, it is also conditioning these teens into thinking that they are too, because now it's a trend, right? So they're going on TikTok, which I don't know why any parent would allow their child.
You chop your penis off only one time.
Right. And so
you get the views then, and
you get the views then, but they're going on TikTok and they're seeing these people live these alternative lifestyles and they're getting thousands, perhaps millions of views, and it seems to be the cool, trendy thing to do. And so these kids are going on there and going, this is what I am, Mom. You have to affirm me. Then what's happening is you do have a medical community that is pressuring these parents who do say, I don't think so. The medical community is pressuring those parents into agreeing with them by saying, if you don't do this, your child could kill themselves. It is an emotional manipulation. Oh, absolutely.
There's huge money.
It's lucrative. It's incredibly lucrative because think about it. Once you get this patient, once you mutilate them, once you give them these hormones, once you do these procedures, it is lifelong. It is a cash cow because what happens after they have the procedures? They have complications. Who do they need to go to for the complications? The doctor. The doctor gets paid every single time. It's a lifelong cash cow for these doctors, which is why I tell people the only way out of this is to sue them into oblivion.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way they'll stop. Will they still be radicals? Yes. Will they still think these crazy things? Yes, but they'll be too scared to do it because they're going to be scared that they're going to go bankrupt. That's the only way.
Let's turn our attention to Trevor Bauer because this is a more fun story. This one that we've been discussing is, and listen, by the way, Sarah, I commend you. What you're doing in that work is an amazing work, and it's very bold of you to do it, and I'm very appreciative of you doing it. But Trevor Bauer, I want to hear this scoop from its inception to where we are. Trevor Bauer, professional baseball player, Me Too'd into oblivion, and you have been his. What do I want to say is guardian angel. You really have. I mean, I won't go so far as to say you've saved his career yet.
Yeah.
That remains to be seen.
Right.
But possibly.
Yeah.
And you've done it in a couple of stellar interviews that I find astonishing. I'm thinking, how in the world did Sarah bring this about? Tell us a little bit. Tell our audience a little bit about Trevor Bauer,
sure,
the trouble that he ended up in, and then your role.
Yeah. So it's funny. I didn't even know who Trevor Bauer was until I heard about his legal situation that he was facing. And so what I now know is that Trevor Bauer was a Major League Baseball pitcher for the Dodgers, I believe, and he was released from his role, had to walk away from obviously a multi-million-dollar career because he was accused of sexual assault. It turned out by not just one woman.
What was this, 2020, 2021?
Yes, I believe so.
So no due process, just bang, you're gone.
Correct, right. Because then in the MLB, they, I guess, do some sort of internal investigation and they don't give you the proper ability to defend yourself and they don't actually tell you all of the allegations against you. They do these backroom investigations and decide whether or not you get to have a career or not. And so they decided, after talking to Trevor Bauer's accuser, that he was no longer welcome in Major League Baseball and he needed to find something else to do. And so what turned out happening was that his accuser, Lindsey Hill, ended up settling in a lawsuit, which he came out with this epic video on Twitter. I encourage everyone to go watch it because that's what alerted me to the entire case. So he said, okay, here's what happened. I just settled a case because, and by the way, he didn't pay any money and he didn't admit any wrongdoing or anything like that because it was not a criminal trial. There was no crime that took place according to the San Francisco Police Department, right? This was a civil trial, and this woman's insurance company ended up paying her. So what he came to Twitter to show were the receipts. And of course, the receipts were very damning for her. It was text messages between herself and her friend talking about how she wanted to basically exploit him for his money once she met up with him.
And you're putting it very nicely.
I am. Yes. I'm trying to keep it clean for your audience, Larry.
Because if you see, and these are on your Twitter feed, yes?
Yes.
If you see these text messages, you're just going,
Yeah. I can't believe that this woman had the audacity to accuse him of anything in the first place because it was very clearly an extortion setup. And so,
and I think she even used the phrase "setup." Did she not?
I believe that she did.
Yes, I think that was in there somewhere. Or maybe her friend said that. But
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
So Trevor Bauer, of course, was falsely accused in a long line of many men who were falsely accused and Me Too'd and lost almost everything. And of course, the allegations end up turning out to be completely bogus. And so what I did was, after Trevor Bauer released this video showing what he had received in discovery from his lawyers, showing the text messages, actually coming with the true receipts that I'm sure the Major League Baseball never got, right? They never gave him an opportunity.
And probably didn't care.
Didn't care.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. What matters are the optics and the court of public opinion.
Social
and everyone,
justice.
Yes, everyone always wants to find men completely guilty, believe all women, without even listening to the actual facts of the case. And so what I got this woman to agree to was interview with me, right? I'm going to give you a chance to say your piece.
Little Sara Gonzales.
Yeah, I'm a female. I'm a fellow female. Come on, we'll just chat it up.
Sara, just come on. We're going to talk some cooking.
Yes. And so what she didn't know was that I had studied the case extensively and I had gone through the evidence extensively. And so she had to explain to me why, if he assaulted her so brutally the first time around, she sent him text messages telling him that was the best sex that she had ever had and came back for more in the following weeks. Doesn't sound to me like someone who was just brutally assaulted by essentially a stranger would do. Doesn't sound like that. So please explain that to me. She had a really difficult time explaining that. As
Yeah, I saw that.
Probably imagine.
She did. She did. It was pretty incredible. I think the off-camera stuff was probably the most incredible bit, which is how you even got her to do it.
I mean, I just played on her narcissism at the end of the day. It's amazing, because you got to think about it. What kind of woman would do this to a man, ruin his entire life just for some money, right? Just so that they can live comfortably.
How much was she paid by her insurance company?
$300,000.
Okay.
Nothing. Right. I'm sure I asked her this, but she wouldn't tell me. But what I asked her was that basically just to cover your legal bills? She wouldn't answer that question, but I'd imagine, presumably that was to cover her attorney's bills and that was it. But imagine the type of person that it takes to do something like that. So I thought I'll play on her narcissism and she'll walk right into the trap. She had slid into the DMs, as the kids say, of one of my colleagues at Blaze. And he realized it and told me about it. And he actually had her on his show the day before. Now, he went far easier on her because I think men tend to go, well, she's a woman and I don't want to beat her up live on air. That would look bad.
Hey, well, not only that, but I will say this, and I actually don't, I know who the person is, but he's probably not a Southerner, I'm guessing. But I will say this, my generation, at least, of Southern men, we're taught to be very deferential.
Right.
To women, not in a condescending way. You're just taught. Just part of what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So but I also think it would be almost impossible. Only you could have done this.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't have pulled that off. Chad Prather couldn't have pulled that off. I don't think. No, absolutely not. I don't think a man could have done that.
No.
And looked. It would look like some sort of virtual assault and battery.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
it would look like a bullying situation. So I was able to, just put her on the spot and read her what she wrote in her own words. And
she hanged herself.
Ask her to explain. You
didn't trap her. You didn't trick her into saying something. There was no subterfuge.
Right.
It was just, here's what you said.
Right.
Here's what you texted. Here's what you now say on the show. Explain.
Right.
Well, Ms. Gonzales, I want to thank you for having me on the show today. And you think she's got to be thinking to herself, this is a script she was given to say when she came on, no matter what, not knowing that this is what was coming, but she read it anyway. Yeah. And it was kind of funny.
Almost every question I asked her, you could tell that she was buying herself time because she said, that's a super valid question.
That's a very good question.
That's a valid question.
That question is so wonderful. I'm so glad you asked it. I'm so glad you found these text messages. Did the insurance company all look at these things?
I mean,
are they just stroke checks, or are they also just, and maybe you can't answer this question, it makes you wonder, though, if they're thinking, We're concerned about our own optics.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's easier for us to pay the $300,000 than it is for us to say, no, we're going to sue her.
Yes. And that's the thing that I think it comes down to is that, at the end of the day, I mean, she tried to argue, well, he wouldn't have settled if he was innocent. He wouldn't have settled. And I said, he's been dealing with this for years now. You've dragged it out in court and he's spent God knows how much money in legal fees. At the end of the day, there's a lot of value in walking away, not paying you a dime.
Yeah.
There's a ton of value in that.
I agree with that. And a man wanting closure and just saying, I just want this gone.
Right.
I just want to move on.
Exactly. And so, by the way,
it's a slow bleed.
It is. And there's a lot of value in saying, because she said, well, he must have done it because he was guilty. And I said, you're talking about going through a traumatic experience. Who's to say he's not been traumatized by this entire experience?
I can only imagine.
Right, being falsely accused of something that he didn't do, and in the moment,
any potential future relationship,
correct?
That's a potential. Oh wow, you're a
forever.
Yeah,
that's forever. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, imagine the trauma that comes from having lived through this experience where you know that you didn't do anything wrong, and being dragged through the mud from it, and potentially losing everything. I mean, there's a lot of value in saying, sure, I'll let your insurance company pay you $300,000 and then I get to walk away and live my life. And so that's what he did. But I mean, it's really sad how many men that happens to, and
don't have his pocketbook.
Correct, exactly. And if I can just give a little bit of attention to the fact that we shouldn't be believing all women, and that there is
sin nature runs through every human heart.
Exactly. Right. I mean, how virtuous that we should think that women are incapable of lying. Right. Yeah. I would argue that women are more catty, are more manipulative, are more cunning. And
we express power in different ways.
Sure.
We express power in very different ways, men and women, and by God's design.
Right.
But it's meant to be used for good, but it can certainly be weaponized.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Especially in this
day and age.
And
men are very stupid about these kinds of things.
They are.
I say that as a man. I think that it's amazing to me how many very clever, highly intelligent, very successful men do very, very stupid things when it relates to this type of thing. And you, of course, would know that. So as a woman, I'm sure you've seen plenty of it.
Well, that's why I'm like...
I mean, Chad's here.
Right. That's why I'm like, okay, so if I could give Trevor Bauer any piece of advice, it would be stop meeting women on the internet who give you a some sort of a compliment. Stop doing that. Stop being promiscuous.
And have a sexy avatar.
Right. Just stop being promiscuous in this day and age. Just stop.
Just stay away.
I would say his mistake, he did make mistakes. None appear to be illegal, but the mistake would be trying to live a promiscuous lifestyle and thinking that that's going to somehow benefit your life.
It's interesting. I recently interviewed, your colleague at The Blaze, Jason Whitlock.
Oh, yeah.
And he was theorizing. I don't want to put words into Jason's...
As he often does.
Yeah. Well, it's a good theory. But we were talking briefly about Charles Barkley and how is it that Charles Barkley has kind of moved to the left, at least in his, the things that he's saying and that he's endorsing and trashing Trump or whatever. Right. And he was saying, not referring specifically to Charles Barkley necessarily, just saying, I think a lot of these people, these athletes have lived these promiscuous lifestyles. Many of them are married. And the powers that be know these things.
Yeah.
And they leverage it against them. It's a kind of blackmail, extortion. You'll carry the water for this agenda, or we can alert these media sources about the lifestyle that you lived. Years ago, I read, on a lighter note, Kenny Stabler. Is an Alabama fan. Are you familiar with the snake? He was a longtime quarterback.
Okay. I married into the Alabama fandom.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. Well, your husband would definitely
he would definitely know.
He's a legendary quarterback at the University of Alabama with Joe Namath. They were there at the same time, and he was slightly younger, came after him. But he was known as a wild child, playboy, in playing for the Oakland Raiders. And his little biography is just I mean, even now on social media, you see pictures of him on the sideline smoking a cigarette and talking to 4 cheerleaders and probably getting all of their numbers.
Right.
A lot of these athletes are still living like those days are still, those are still the days. And the result is that they are getting Trevor Bauered.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because he's not the only one.
No.
And what those text messages you published revealed was, and this speaks to some extent to my own naivete, was her conversation with this friend revealed that this was part of a plan.
Yes.
I mean, they're thinking like this. Okay, so because she asked, "What is he worth?" And I think the reply is something like $50 million contract or something. And she says, "Girl, you better get some of that." Or I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact
bag
wording.
that.
Yeah, bag some of that, and that she's going into the relationship. That's the target. That's the goal. She's not looking to get married. She's not hoping he falls in love with her. She wants the money, and she's coming for it. And you come away going, Me Too was the plan all along.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And honestly, she's lucky that she's not in jail, in my opinion. Because I think
they don't suffer any consequences for these things.
And I think that this will continue until they do, because in my opinion, whatever these men are being accused of, however long that jail time is for that accusation should be how long these women have to serve when they falsely accuse men of that crime.
Yeah.
It's that serious.
This has gone on for some time. Duke Lacrosse and various other stories of this type that have been circulating.
I think it would end very quickly if that were the case.
Oh, I would think so, because there would be a serious consequence to have to pay, other than some kind of social media recrimination.
Right. Which
right now there's virtually none of that. And what's on your horizon? What's next? Who's getting saved next? Who is the poor schmuck out there right now that needs Sara Gonzales to come along and save him? Is it Donald Trump? Are you going to save him?
Oh gosh, I don't know if anyone can save Donald Trump. What we need to do is save the country by making sure that we don't have another 4 years of Joe Biden weekend at Bernie's president.
A fourth Obama term, as I call it.
Yeah, and that it absolutely is. That's completely correct. And that's kind of my. What I'm looking for right now, because we are in for it if we've got another 4 years of Sleepy Joe. So we've got to have all hands on deck. How we unify the party, I am still navigating that. It's hard.
It is.
But I'd like
all
to
the
believe,
rhinos.
Yeah. I'd like to believe that people can get past their hurt feelings that their person didn't, make it through the primaries, and say it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you cannot make a logical argument that Joe Biden for another 4 years would somehow be worse or would somehow be better than Donald Trump. You can't make that argument.
Absolutely not. And somewhere we need to have a conversation about how we mobilize the people who pay attention to what we're saying and equip them, give them the confidence to engage the culture. Just start out modestly. I think we'd agree on that. Don't go out thinking you have to. You don't start with a marathon.
Sure.
You just run around the block a couple of times, and then maybe you set your sights on a 5K, and you build your way up. So I think we got to find a way to mobilize those people. Sara, it's awesome having you on the show. Glad you came.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, this has been Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton. Thank you.